back to The Circle. Time to talk about a serious topic. Every 4 hours, someone dies from a suicide, and every 15 minutes, someone attempts it. Suicide is the major cause of death for men and women under 35 years of age, claiming more lives than motor accidents or skin cancer.
Diana Bliss ended her own life last week after a long struggle with depression.
At 29, Charmaine Dragoon died in a most unexpected and devastating way.
First, a teen's silent torment and the shattered family of a girl who took her own life after being harassed online.
His 17-year-old daughter, Hannah, took her own life.
To explain why we need to break the taboo and start talking about this silent killer, please welcome Sara Maxwell from Suicide Prevention Australia. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us on The Circle. This is such an important topic. Unfortunately, I don't think most Australian people would realise that suicide's the major cause of death for men and women under 35. Why don't we want to talk about suicide?
There's traditionally been a lot of stigma and shame attached to suicide, and unfortunately that still persists today. So people don't talk about it. They don't talk about it in families, they don't talk about it in communities, and as a result people don't realise that it really is the problem that it is. People also think that suicide isn't preventable, which means that they don't necessarily feel like it's something that we need to talk about, whereas in fact we know that there is so much that we can do.
Right. So people think the common perception is that suicide is a path that people will inevitably trudge towards. Now, your organisation is called Suicide Prevention Australia, so it is preventable. That's the message that you want to convey. How does one prevent a suicide?
Well, people need to know that they can get through a suicidal crisis. They need to know that there is somewhere that they can go to get help, and they need to know that when they go through that process, they won't be stigmatised, they won't be discriminated against, and that they'll have a healthy experience. To do that, we need to do better with our mental health services and our health services in general. Training, resources, things like that are very important, but we also need to let the community know that there really is things that can be done, so that when they're at that point that they themselves or a loved one needs help, they know that there's something that they can do about it.
Are there signs in someone who that you could, because it has happened of course in my social circle, and you wonder if you could have done something to stop it. What signs should you look for? There
are many signs that people can look out for. People becoming withdrawn, changing their behaviours, people talking about death and suicide. One of the myths that people have is that if someone talks about it, they don't actually mean it, whereas we know that that's not true. Most people who do take their lives have spoken to someone about it in the past, and that's a subtle way of them reaching out for help. So there's many things that are signs. Unfortunately, not everyone who is at risk will show signs, so there's a balance between knowing the signs and knowing what to do when you see them.
And being fearful about confronting them. But I think you're talking about taboos. It's scary to say, look, are you all right? Are you having suicidal thoughts?
Absolutely, and I think that's something that most people would find very difficult, a conversation to have with someone. But when you balance it against the risk of not talking to them and not asking, not telling them that you're there to support them, it's much better just to have that conversation, even if it's going to be a bit awkward.
Is it also a misconception that, because I had an uncle who committed suicide, and we kind of found some solace in, weird solace in that he wasn't of his right mind. Is that true, or is that a misconception?
Well,
like, are sane people committing suicide?
When a person gets to the point where they're actually suicidal and they're actually really thinking about taking their own life, they're not in a mentally healthy state. So whether they have a diagnosis with mental illness and that's been seen by a psychologist or a doctor, it's not really the point. At the point where they are suicidal, it's not rational and they're not healthy. So that's
I had a young man that jumped out of our building late last year. Unfortunately, had a mental illness, early 30s. It was horrific, and his best mate tried to stop him. Do you need to actually say to people, if someone that's in that situation, are you thinking about taking your own life? And if they say yes, what's the next thing that you need to do? Yeah, asking someone if they're thinking about taking their own life is really important, because it can give them an avenue to ask for help, and it can let them know that you're there for them. To not judge someone, not feel like you have to provide all the answers, because we're not all counsellors, we're not trained to do that, but to let them know that you're there to support them, let them know that they can get through this, point out that other people have got through this in the past and that there are things that can be done, and then getting professional help. And what about the media's role in this? Because I know that a lot of the time the police have an understanding with the media that suicides aren't reported because the theory is it tends to give people ideas.
Copycat.
Copycat stuff. What do you think about that theory? Do you think that helps the issue surrounding talking about suicide or hinders it?
There is research that shows that if you report suicide in the wrong way, if you talk about methods of suicide, if you glamorise the death, there can be negative outcomes for vulnerable people. But that does contribute to the shame and silence that surrounds suicide. So journalists really need to know of how they can talk about it, how they can focus on how people can get better, how they can focus on increasing public awareness of the warning signs and letting people know that they can get help.
So the message is you can talk about it.
Absolutely.
Don't glamorise it, don't sex it up, and don't talk about methods. But apart from that, be open about these sorts of things.
Absolutely. As you said, I mean, most people don't know that it's such a large cause of death, and until people do know, well, then we won't do better at preventing it.
What about a family who've lost a member? Say you've got parents who've lost a child to suicide. How should I approach that in a social setting? Because any other situation, you would probably say something. You would say, I'm so sorry to hear about this, but I think when it's suicide, you feel like you don't know what to say.
I think that's a very common experience, but really it is like a death like any other, and families need to know that it's not different, it's not shameful, and they probably need even more support than people who've lost loved ones in other ways. They often do need some sort of professional help to structure and understand their grief properly, because people who've lost someone from suicide are at increased risk of mental distress and suicide themselves. But for getting community and family support and not feeling like this death is something that needs to be silenced and not talked about is really important, because it will compound their grief and make the long-term recovery much more difficult.
And you're allowed to grieve, aren't you? It's a very serious topic. Would you please thank our guest today, Sara Maxwell? Remember, if you or someone you know needs to talk, Lifeline is available 24 hours a day on 131114. I'm going to say it again, 131114. We'll be back with more of The Circle after this.